Shabbat Shalom, welcome back. So I was just watching a bit of that documentary called The Covenant and Controversy, Part 3, and very well done series. I've watched part ones and parts 1 and 2, and I got to thinking about what's going to happen in the coming days and years ahead in regards to the nation of Israel. So what's going to happen is, well, let me just get to this first. Remember when Moses, by the hand of Yah, led Israel out of captivity, out of Egypt, and the Israelites complained and accused Moses and indirectly Yah that you brought us out here. You took us out of Egypt and you brought us out into the wilderness, into the desert. That's what the wilderness means, into the desert to kill us all. That's why you did it. You brought us here to kill us. Why am I mentioning this? Because a lot of believers today erroneously believe that the wrong idea, very wrong idea of replacement theology, thinking that God has forsaken Israel completely. He just cast them off like a menstrual rag, and that's just not the case. We see that in prophecy. There is a restoration of Israel. God did not bring them out of the Holocaust and then bring them back to the land of Israel. I'm not, when I say them, I don't mean, that's not all Israel. That's a portion of the 12 tribes. There's still many tribes that are not part of that. But he has a remnant, and most of it is from Judah or Yehuda, and some from Levi, some from, I believe, Simeon and maybe Benjamin. But anyhow, point is, he didn't bring them out of that Holocaust and then into the land in 1948, surviving pretty much all the antagonistic nations around them who wanted to destroy them and destroy them, essentially wipe them off the face of the earth pretty much immediately when they became a nation, 1948. And then again in 1967, God didn't make those events happen, or those events did not happen outside of the will of Elohim, in order for them to just be cast off and to be destroyed and to be forsaken and just to for them to be wiped off the map. He didn't lead them out of all the things that they've been led out of since the Exodus to the Holocaust to where we see now, where they have Jerusalem again. Once again, they have Jerusalem. And it looks like the movement is, or the trend is, that the third temple will be built. The third temple will be built. And to deny that God's prophecies, Elohim's prophecies, Yah's prophecies are coming true before our very eyes in the last decade, the Holocaust was probably one of the things to prevent that from happening. Perhaps that was Satan's plan, or he's using that, or actually God was using Satan. But anyhow, he probably thought that, hey, I can take them out, exterminate them, so there will not be a remnant. Because that was probably one of the first times in history where they were not just taken to captivity into these concentration camps, but taken to be exterminated. Babylon didn't do that. They didn't take them into captivity to do a genocide. Neither did Persia. Neither, did these other uh, empires that conquered Israel and took them into captivity. They didn't do so to exterminate them. There was one individual by the name of Haman who wanted to do that, but his plan failed. However, there was also an individual by the name of Adolf, and his plan almost was successful. He was a greater Haman. So the point is, Yah Elohim is not did not put them in that land, did not, bring them out of the Holocaust, bring them to the land of Israel, geographic Israel, and then see them through those two wars. Pretty much gave them the victory through miraculous means. When you think about it, what other nation has had the odds so much against them? Have you ever heard of a war where it's like multiple countries against one, and they came out the better? I've never heard of that in my entire lifetime. I've never heard of that, except in the Bible. Except in the Bible. Um, my point is, Yah Elohim did not. Our Father in heaven did not put Israel there and see them out of the Holocaust and bring them to the land and see them through those two wars and to where we are now, where there seems to be a movement to establish and build and have a third temple, have the Sanhedrin, have the Levites to serve in that temple and start doing sacrifice again and all that just to wipe them off the map. That's not the purpose of Elohim. I'm not giving, no, I'm not saying that this third temple, we should all go there and, be part of that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying prophecy is coming true because that's one of the conditions that is needed in order for the Messiah to return the second time. Yeshua has to, uh, it says the sacrifices will be put to an end. They will surround Jerusalem. All these things will happen. The abomination of desolation seems like a second one that is coming. But these things are necessary before his second coming. There has to be a third temple. And I fear, not so much I fear, but I will warn people that as much as we take those things for granted, what I just mentioned, that uh, this portion of Israel, again, they're not all Israel. There's a portion of the 12 tribes of Israel went through the Holocaust, and many of them perished, and they were given that they were allowed to go back to their land. We take that for granted. That they won those two wars, 1948, 1967. We take that for granted. They recaptured the city of Jerusalem. We take that for granted. They'll rebuild the third temple. We will take that for granted too. We will. We will take it for granted. We're going to say, oh, third temple's up and they're sacrificing again. Oh, what else is new? All right, back to sports or whatever it is. We will take it for granted. They're going to build the third temple and we'll take it for granted. A lot of people just become normal. Things become so normal. We just take things for granted. The fact that we're alive, we take that for granted. People in America, you take your freedom for granted, your freedom of religion, your ability to worship on the Shabbat, your ability to keep the feast days, to live according to the Torah. You take that for granted. People in the Middle East are literally being imprisoned, raped, murdered, just for even a subtle, Shabbat Shalom or anything, even the slightest scent that you are a Christian, you will be imprisoned. You will be killed. You'll be murdered. You'll be raped. We take that for granted, and it's so sad. It is so sad. We have grown lukewarm. The love of many has waxed cold in the West. How can God work his miracles and make his power to be known when there's no faith in America? And I'm not talking about no faith, period. I'm saying we lack the faith. Yes, we have some form of faith, and there are people with good hearts. There are people who are devout. But for the most part, we are not the church in Acts. We're not like them. We aren't going through the same hardships. We aren't resisting to blood. We aren't martyred. We are not being martyrs. We're not. How many of us are willing to put our head on the chopping block and say, okay, chop my head off? I'm not saying wish for death, but how many of us are ready to die for Messiah in that way and just give up everything? When Yeshua said give up everything, he wasn't joking. He wasn't saying, oh, give up a little bit. No, give up everything. Leave your family and follow me. I'm not saying just abandon your families. I'm saying that's what he said. And a lot of these disciples of his, these These mature men, I feel like they did abandon their families because this was greater than that. I know it does sound kind of neglectful, but research it. Some of these men probably were married. I don't know how many of them were single. It's an interesting thought, and some people speculate the Apostle Paul was married too, and he abandoned that in favor of the gospel and preaching Yeshua instead. I don't know. I don't know if that's true, but please comment and look into that because that's a topic that for another day. That's a very interesting topic, but we take these things for granted. It's very very sad, and you know what? I take it for granted too. I'm not innocent of that. It's a wake up call to us all that don't take these things for granted. Our time is coming soon. They are being persecuted to the point of death, rape, murder, imprisonment. That is coming. I believe it is coming. I don't know if it's going to be to that same degree, but for a lot of people, it has come. People are being persecuted for being Christian. You can't talk about religion at work. You might get a slap on the wrist or even fired. Or, if you voice out your, say, like a political opinion, it's not really political, but if it's to do with something against what the mainstream is teaching and promoting, that's going to be perceived as political, even though, the Torah and what is written in the law of Elohim, it it isn't meant to be political. It's just right. It's just correct. Some Muslims will say in the Quran, this is their faith, this is what they believe, this is their precepts, their creed, to believe that this is wrong, whatever it is about the world that they're doing is wrong. So who's to say that they're being political? They're just adhering to their belief, their faith. They're adhering to their faith. And the same with us. We're adhering to our faith. It's not being political, it's just being factual. A fish swims in the water, it's factual. You're going to say that's political because you're swimming in the water? That's what they're telling us Christians, followers of Yeshua, that you're being political because on this topic, you're pro whatever and you're not pro that or whatever the other stance is. I think one is pro life and one is pro death. Basically, it's what it is. And yeah, it's funny. Well, not funny, but majority of Muslims also are pro life too. That's one of the most contentious issues in America. In the Middle East, is that even an issue? I don't think that's an issue. I feel like across the board, they are pro life. I don't think that's even an issue. So, I mean, they're pretty good there when it comes to that and, other topics as well, which I won't mention. But yeah, we take things for granted. And it's like we need persecution. It's like we need to die. Again, I'm not wishing death on myself or anyone else, but I'm saying that it is through persecution and through trials only that we will enter the kingdom of God. We must. It says we must go through these things in order to enter the kingdom of God, the kingdom of Elohim. We have to. It's not optional. It's mandatory, in fact. Whether that's in the form of, familial persecution, being forsaken by your family, being rejected, that's a form of persecution. Everyone's got their own burdens. It's not like you have to be imprisoned and raped and murdered. It's not one size fits all. There's going to be different forms of that. Perhaps your family will forsake you. Perhaps you lose all your friends. Perhaps the world will just hate you, or certain groups will hate you. They look at you and they have disdain for you. They just want to kill you, or they just want to just for no logical reason. They just want to hate you. They hate you without a cause. You say that, their ways are wrong and they hate you for it. So you'll be rejected, despised. Maybe some will even frame you to get you imprisoned. Maybe you will be raped. Maybe you will be murdered. I don't know. I mean, there is violence in North America. There are a lot of crimes. There are areas where you should not go to at night by yourself. Even if you are a man, you will still be murdered. Not saying that, it's perfect here. Yeah, there are places like Chicago where the crime rate is just worse than Iraq. Like people are being murdered to a rate that's higher than Iraq. They call it Chirac. But the truth is we take these things for granted, and I think it's very dangerous. There's a risk of us taking the third temple for granted. I'm not saying let's all go there again. I'm not supporting it in that way. I'm saying that we take these things that we see around us for granted and it just becomes normal and we forget and we are lulled into some kind of dream state saying, "Oh, God is delaying. Is God really delaying? Is our Father delaying? Because if He is, there would be no nation of Israel right now. They would not have Jerusalem. The people again, the Yehudim, because they're one tribe and some parts of other tribes, Levi and so on, they are in the land of Jerusalem. We're taking that for granted as well. The people, or part of the people of Israel, are there. They are known as Israel, right or wrong, but they're known as the nation of Israel. Although they're again Judah, maybe it's better to call them Judah, but whatever. They are there. They have sovereignty. They have a leader, a new one now who's very right wing, very conservative. I think he's an Orthodox. He's Orthodox of Yehuda, and apparently, I don't know if this is true, but people are saying that he is one who will not be pushed around and is very much in favor of approving the building of the third temple, and that's going to start something, a fight. It's going to start a fight. Let's just say, will it start a war? Probably will. I don't know how big of a war, but you can expect at least one invasion. There's going to be at least one country who will attack them, and it won't just be rockets. They're going to bring like the full everyone, the full Monty. They're going to bring jets, they're going to bring tanks, they're going to bring soldiers on the ground, boots on the ground. It won't just be rockets. They're going to freaking invade Israel. Sorry to use the freaking, but I'm just trying to emphasize that it's going to be serious. They're going to, if they even put the cornerstone down, because the fact remains, the reality is that a Jew is not allowed to pray on the uh, the Temple Mount. They're not allowed to pray. So what more if they put down the cornerstone, which is a signal that not only will prayer be done, but sacrifices will be done. People will gather from all around the world to keep the feasts in Jerusalem. It's not just a temple just for decoration. It's a central location for worship. You can have millions of Jews and probably Christians, Messianics, and whoever heart is very much for Jerusalem who want to be part of that. Because, yeah, it is a joyful time. And we may not keep it all the same time, the same month, but it'll be such a sight to see. It's going to be almost impossible to resist going there and seeing this revival, this spiritual revival that may take place. Again, it's speculation on my part. But if there's a third temple, you think they're just going to pass the chance up to dwell in tents on a large scale? You're going to have so many tents. You're going to have so many people taking part in these biblical feasts based on Hillel too. They're going to do it based on Hillel too. But still, they're doing it according to what they understand. It's going to be we have a very interesting time ahead. And again, the third temple hasn't been built yet, but I'm looking forward to that and to kind of forecast what will be the ramifications besides again a war, an invasion potentially. People will be mad, countries will be mad, and that's going to be one of the hottest topics on the planet and the United Nations and all the discussions and news and everything. Social media, it's going to be like an atomic bomb, like in terms of, by metaphor, I mean metaphorical atomic bomb on the world. They're going to say, what in the world? Because look at Mecca. Mecca, they have Mecca. That's the number one holiest place for Muslims is Mecca, and they have the black rock. I believe it's called the Kaaba, if I'm not mistaken. That would be their Mecca. Is that third temple? The Jews do not have a centralized place to worship. They have various denominations. They have small synagogues and buildings, but nothing grand like not even like the Dome of the Rock. They don't even have something like that. I don't think. Um, and just speaking as a human being, not as somebody, just speaking as an observer. That is, I think it's a shame. I think it is a shame. They don't have a place to worship, a centralized location. I hate to say this, but Catholics do. I'm not a Catholic, but Catholics have a central location. I believe that's Vatican, the Vatican City. That would be their location. Whatever your thoughts are on that, but I mean that's the location, right? But God's location, we already know where that is. He put his name there. He put his name there because his name is Yah. It's Yerushalayim. Yeah, Yehovah, right? Yeah is Yah. His name is there, and that in the name of the city, his name is there. Literally, his name is there. YH Yerushalayim. So it's there. Um, he stamped his name on there. It's the first three letters there. YEH Yerushalayim. So wow, wow. Okay. Anyway, this isn't supposed to be a rehearsal, but you know what? I'm going to start a new stream because this is such a. I was only going to say these are 2 points I wanted to bring up. Number one, God didn't. He's not dealing with Israel just to discard them and for them to be relegated to genocide and to be extinct, wiped off the map. No, just like he brought them out of the wilderness, or not the wilderness, out of Egypt into the wilderness, and then into the promised land. Yes, a lot of them died, and I think only Caleb and Yeshua, the son of Nun, were the only two survived. So yeah, there's a remnant, and I believe maybe the children of those who murmured, who complained, were the other ones who entered as well. But all the generation that um, came out of Egypt, the ones who did murmur, were taken out. They were not allowed to enter the land. So I believe Yah is doing the same thing. That Elohim is doing the same thing. Yes, there was a Holocaust, and many people died, but there is a remnant that came out. They're in the land that is now known as Israel. They are known as the nation of Israel, and they are technically again the tribe of Judah and Levi, and I believe Simeon. I'm not sure, but anyway, mostly Judah, because it says they are the law. I think it says that they are holding the banner. They are the ones who preserve the law in a way, like they have. What other culture has preserved the Torah scrolls, and without them, there would be no Septuagint. I acknowledge this, and I'm very much, words cannot express how thankful I am for this nation who preserved that word throughout the millennia, translated this word that Moses had written that was given to Moses into Greek. And we know this is the Septuagint. Without this people that God used, we would be lost in just doing our own thing. So, yeah, he didn't call them just for them to not make it. And similarly, us who have been called to know the Torah, to know the God of the Bible, to know Yeshua, he didn't bring us out of the world for us to fail. It's not his purpose for us. Yeah, some people will fail. Those who are just not, you know, whatever, if they choose to not do it and they just rebel, or whatever the circumstances are, those who don't make it will not make it. But his purpose is for us to make it. But we have to also do our part. So he didn't call us to fail either. He didn't call us just to wipe us out, just for us to eternally die. No. We are like the spiritual Israel. Not saying we're replacing Israel, but we are the Gentiles. We've been grafted in. And he didn't call us to fail. So likewise, he did not call Israel. He did not bring Israel to the land just so that they would be wiped out and they will not exist as a nation. That will not happen. That is not in scripture that they will be wiped out as a nation. Yes, they will go through Jacob's trouble, and many people will probably die. I don't know how many people will die, but there will be deaths. There have been deaths, and there'll be more deaths. But God will intervene because they are his people. He will protect them because they have his city and he loves that city. Yeshua, he mourned for that city and he lived there. He was there. He walked there. He ascended from the Mount of Olives and he will descend at that same place and will divide that place and it would split into two. And no matter how many graves they build to prevent him entering Jerusalem, those graves are going to open up and they will probably even open up in such a way that make a clear path for the Lord to travel. So you'll be able to enter, not just enter like through a crack. It's going to be like a majestic entryway fit for a king. You know, they say that the walls of Jericho, when they fell, it didn't just fall like flat. It fell like stairs so they can just walk up it like a ramp. Maybe that's what will happen to the Mount of Olives. It'll be like a ramp, and then Yeshua can just walk through it, although he is on a horse apparently, or he's in his true form, so you could just fly through it. I mean, it's going to be so wow. I mean, beyond our wildest dreams and our wildest imaginations when he comes the second time. He came as a man, a baby, and then grew up as a human being, son of Adam, was a man just like me and a lot of us. But um, when he comes the second time, wow, wow, it's going to be. It says that we will be like him because we will see him as he really is in all his full glory. It's it's something that I try to imagine, but really when it happens, it's going to be jaw dropping, and people will probably pass out from just the majesty of it and just from the wonder of it all and just how powerful he is. It's going to be, we've never seen anything like that. People imagine it, but it's still, even our imagination will not prepare us for it. It's just too much. Like even the prophecies are so graphic and trying to capture what the power of God is, but it's still not enough until you actually see it for yourself. And we believe it with all our heart that it's going to happen. Man, anyway, I'm so off topic, but how do we become like those in the Middle East who fear for their lives and are so zealous for this way? I feel like last year was a preview that we didn't know was going to happen, that we felt the walls closing in, or at least I did. And I thought, this is all ending. These are the birth pangs. These are the beginning of the birth pangs. I still have no doubt that it is, but I was very, very much anxious about it and thinking, oh, this is happening like in the next few months. No, it's beginning of the birth pangs. So these things are happening. We should have a sense of urgency. We should have a set our priorities right as to what is really important to redeem the time, to really want the things that Elohim wants, to really think the thoughts that are pleasing to him, the thoughts he would think, the words he would say, and the actions he would do, the attitude he would have. And yeah, it's really good to, when a lot of us were in isolation, you get to really immerse yourself in the word, but there also comes a time when that is no longer a factor. You can go out there and make disciples, or at least preach. And we're not just preaching like everybody, like in public and just throwing the word out like it's just, casting pearls to swine. No, we should do so in a way it's very organized and you target people who are more receptive to it. Not saying you don't preach to everyone. Maybe you can, but it takes wisdom to know who will be receptive. On the other hand, if we are more wise about it and you're trying to, let's say you preach to someone who's Jewish, from a Jewish background, and you're preaching to them the Jewish Messiah. Yeshua was Jewish. He didn't forsake the law. He was circumcised the eighth day. He kept this Sabbath, the holy days. Uh, He's the Jewish Messiah. He never did away with the law. He was, he's probably the most Jewish person that ever existed. When you think about it, so, I mean, you could preach that to them, and a lot of the Jews don't even know what the words he said and what he did. It's been censored. It's been concealed from them. That could be effective. You preach to a Christian who doesn't believe that we should be keeping the Torah, but if you tell them, the Sabbath is, or just ask them, what do you believe? Just make conversation, be friends with these people, whoever it is, even a Muslim. You can ask them, what about the Sabbath? What do you believe about that? What do you believe about unclean meats? You don't eat pork, neither do I. You find the common ground, and if they, whoever it is, if you're a discerning person, God gives you the discernment, the perception to know, okay, this person actually wants to learn. They're hungry for the truth. On the other hand, those who are so set in their ways and not open-minded, you will know. I think you will know that they just want to prove to you that they are right, that they're not really looking for the truth. Me, I don't claim to know all the truth. So if somebody comes in this channel, even like right now, and they say, you know what, I don't believe in this teaching or this prophecy or whatever it is, whatever topic, and it would be wrong for me to say, no, you're wrong. No, I know it all, and this is the truth, and it's only the truth. But if I'm open to not entertaining lies, but I'm just saying that I'm open to listening to them. Number one, listen, and then say, okay, well, explain that to me. How can you prove this through scripture? And then they try, and maybe they do so, and I go, oh, I didn't know, I didn't never saw it that way. So that's great. I keep an open mind, or maybe I say, you know what, I don't believe what you're saying, but I respect it. Or I'll say, I'm open to that idea because it's not a topic that is black and white. It's like a gray area. So I'm open to that being a possibility. It's a potential scenario that it could be, or whatever. It's a potential. You're potentially right, and I'm potentially right, but it's just not something we can determine until God Himself tells us, okay, no, it's this way. Right? Oh, okay, well, we're both wrong, or maybe whatever it is. So I think that's important too. Um, but yeah, in terms of foundational things, Ten Commandments, Sabbath, holy days, there are some things that are just, we should have in common. It says they are of one accord. They believe the same things and all that, but it doesn't mean they believed every little thing the same. There's some people who believe the resurrection and some who didn't. And some, you know what I mean? Like there's so many, we can have all these factions just because of little differences of, little, uh, little disagreements here and there. Some people believe, oh, the new year is based on the, sighted moon is how you determine the months. And I agree with you. Yeah. But then some will say, yeah, we believe you too. So yeah, we're all in agreement. But I don't believe, the barley is the way to determine it. Or some will say, yeah, I do believe the barley is how you determine it, but it has to be a full field. It has to be a harvestable field. It can't just be one omer. And I'm not going to argue with them. I'm not going to say, oh, you idiot. I'm just say, yeah, you know what? I understand how you can see it that way, but respectfully, I understand it this way. Or you need more signs, or by the time of this month, this should have been, this will be, harvested as well, whether it's the pomegranates or whatever the other signs that you must see. But to just cut people off, and by cut them off, not like just cut you off and stop talking, I mean to just cut off all relations with them just because of one little disagreement, like on something about the Aviv. That is a shame. That is such a shame. It's such a shame, because that's something that can be corrected so quickly at the coming of Messiah. He'll just tell us, okay, it's actually this way. I know you guys tried your dandiest, and with all your heart you wanted to do the right thing, but I'm setting you straight now. So you have to, you know, fall into line, essentially, because I'm the, the one who gave you the law. So if you don't, then you know what happens. So at that point, we will fall into line and we will agree. But these are issues that are valid questions, and it's not something we should divide on or shame other people for or look down on anyone for these things. But then there are some things where we have to be hard, not hard, but we have to be firm on, um, such as the Shabbat, such as the Ten Commandments, such as certain stances on how the world views things. And mentioned earlier about the issue of pro life and pro death, whatever they call it. But anyway, essentially it's pro death. That's what it is. It's either pro life or pro death. They call it pro choice to make it sound, they sugarcoat it, but it's really the choice of death. Unless, okay, I'm going to allow this. I think Yah allows it too, unless the woman, the mother's life is at danger and she might die as a result of the pregnancy. That could be an exception, just to save the mother's life. That's a topic I don't think I've looked into too deeply, but we see from scripture, the mother of Benjamin, she died in childbirth. I believe it was Rachel. Or was it Leah? But anyhow, one of them, they died as a result of childbirth. But how would they know she would have died, right? They didn't have the technology to determine, okay, you know what, you might die from this. This is a breach or whatever it is. This is not going to be good for you. So maybe that would be an exception because I know a lot of faiths, even in the Muslims and Jews, and I think all across the board, I think there's a consensus that if the woman, or I should say the mother's life is at stake and she is probably going to die from this pregnancy, that is an exception to abort in order to save the mother's life, and then she can try again and give birth and not have to worry about dying. Maybe that is forgivable. I can't say I'm not the judge, but that is a very valid question, and a very it's a tough scenario. Yeah, it is a hard scenario. And I mean, it is the mother who's saying, I want to live, but I mean, maybe their love for their child is so much that they'd rather give up their life. But then, are they gonna? Who's gonna take care of their child besides the father? Right? It's a dilemma if I've ever heard of one. So anyway, I'm gonna start a new stream because it's not what I planned. I wanted to do a rehearsal, and then I got into this topic because I was watching that video, and I realized, you know what? I just thought about this, and I will forget it. I'm going to forget that we will take for granted this third temple. People will eventually take it for granted. We won't, not maybe not initially. Maybe not initially when it's built. We'll go, whoa, what is going on? And we better pack up our bags and prepare for war and all this stuff. But there will come a point where we'll go, oh yeah, how are you doing? I'm good. So third temple, eh? And I'm going, yeah, third temple. Okay, about those bears, the bears, it's back to normal life. I guess it's just human, maybe, but I think it's a danger where we can be lackadaisical and then be like people who say, oh, yeah, is tarrying, he's delaying his coming, and it'll never happen because they've been saying over and over, he's returning this year, he's returning that year. Oh, he's delaying, but it says he will come quickly. Surely I come, and I come quickly. So, although time is going slow, it is going fast, and we don't have the eternal perspective as Elohim does to see time the way he does. That a day is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is a day. That when he comes, it's actually quick for him. Um, when we look at the millennium, time is measured. I believe we're at the year 5857, something like that. So, I mean, some people will say that 6 days, 6 millennial days will be 6,000. So we have 100 whatever years. But then when you look at like Jubilee cycles, for example, when you measure time using that, that changes everything. It's not 6,000 years. It's more like, I think it's 5880. It's only 5880. So when that day completes, that sixth millennial day, that would be the year 2044, meaning we are less than 23 years away. And if that's correct, that's not a lot of time. It is, but it isn't. So he is coming quickly when you say. However, if we're going to go by, I'm not saying that it's wrong. If you go by 6,000 years, why wouldn't you? I mean, that's logical. It's also logical. I'm going to be open to that. It's still only 120 years, but then I think the Hallel 2 calendar counts the year so much differently. I think they're kind of behind. I think they're like at 577, whatever. But anyhow, it's still 1 to 200 years away. That's still not a lot of time either. I mean, it is, but it isn't. That's like what, at least 5 generations, maybe 10. If it happens in our lifetime, it does. But if it doesn't, it doesn't. But regardless, we should still be the people and the individuals that our God knows we can be to reach our full potential. And it's not just on our own human efforts that we'll reach there, that we'll get to that point. It is submitting our will. And as much as, Islam is surrender, it means surrender. That's one of the things I can say, I give them credit because when you surrender your will to God and let Him take over, let His Spirit take over and lead you, you die to yourself, you surrender, you die to yourself. Then only then can our true potential be take shape and to become who we should be. Because King David was described as a man after God's own heart, right? When he was led by his own carnal desires and will, when he just went according to what he thought was right and let his own will uh, direct him, that's when he went into trouble. He didn't become, the person that God wanted him to be or do the things that God wanted him to do. But through those same things those mistakes he made, he also was able to repent. He had that opportunity to repent, and also when he repented from the great sin he did regarding Uriah, killing Uriah, taking his wife, he he learned of God's love, because to whom much is forgiven, they love even more. Their love is even greater. But if you're just forgiven, oh, you owe me a penny, it's like, okay, here's forgive you the penny. You're like, oh, okay, no big deal. But if you owe $1 billion, or you owe your life, and you have to, be a slave or work for whatever 50 years, but then God cancels that and says, you know what, I forgive you. You don't have to pay that penalty. You're free. You're you're going to live your life so much differently. You're going to say, I'm in debt to you. I owe you my life. And very much like David, he was the man. He is a dead man. He deserved to die for what he did. But God extended his chesed, his mercy, upon David to say, your life is spared. And not only that, but the Messiah is going to come out of his seed. It's going to be one of his descendants from his family tree. It's going to be out of him. So when he allowed, when he submitted his will and let the Spirit of Yah work in him, like when he was younger against Goliath, when he was running away from Saul, in hiding, and Saul was trying to kill him. that persecution, that those hardships really increased his faith. His faith was probably at an all-time high in his life during those years, during his formative years. I think he was still a young man, probably not even 40 by that time. I think he was probably in his 20s, 30s. And so those having his life kind of in the balance and wasn't sure if he would survive the next day. And if Saul, I was going to say Paul, but but if King Saul found him and his men would capture him and then murder him, that was had to be close to God. He had to be close to his God because he depended on him just for survival. And being close to God gave him that confidence and faith that, yeah, he would be protected, that he is God's anointed. Although he also acknowledged Saul as being, this is God's anointed. I won't lay a finger on him. I will not harm him. So he still had that integrity, that righteousness, and respect for who God had anointed before him, knowing that, even though maybe he did not know this principle, or maybe he did, that you shall not repay evil for evil, and that the one who takes vengeance on your enemies is not yourself, but Yah Elohim is the one who's the one who has the right and authority, and he can take vengeance for us on our behalf, unless he outright commands us. Okay, do this. Okay, David, you can wipe out this nation, whatever it's the Amorites or whoever that has been committing sin and it's reached up to heaven and all that. So, but otherwise, yeah, uh, King David, very good example of the mercy, the chesed of Elohim being demonstrated when he spared his life, when he deserved, excuse me, the death penalty for what he did concerning Uriah. He said, "You are the man," and that is a very strong example of that. I probably will use that, so I'm going to remember that. Oh wow, I'm almost at an hour. Almost at an hour. It's supposed to be a short video. I had two thoughts. Oh, 48 minutes later. Man, it is Shabbat, and this isn't normal time. These last 49 minutes are going to be 50 minutes soon. I don't think would happen on a normal day of the week. That is not the Shabbat. Um, I don't speak with that much gusto. I usually am just like monotonous like this, but it's true. We take things for granted, and they even mentioned something of in the documentary. It's called "Sheep Among Wolves," and they said there's a satanic lullaby in the West, a satanic lullaby, and it's so instructive, and it really pricks your conscience that yeah, we are so comfortable. It's a satanic lullaby that it lulls us into this spiritual slumber that we aren't crying out with all our being and all our heart and all our desperation that God save us, Hoshana, save us from this. But why would you do that? It's like, save me from this land of abundance and blessings. No, we aren't crying out because we're surrounded in affluence and wealth and prosperity and relative peace for the most part. Very much a lack of persecution, religious freedom. Like, I can do this stream and I'm not in fear like, oh, they're going to report me to the authorities and I'll be imprisoned tomorrow and, whipped and all that and then possibly murdered and beheaded. No, I don't have that. And maybe if that situation were to change, would I still be doing the streams? Am I just going to be like, oh, I got to be careful because they might catch me, Not saying that, we should just be stupid and say, okay, yeah, I'm just going to continue doing the streams. I don't care if I get arrested and beheaded. Because there is a time where you have to exercise wisdom and say, okay, is it my time? Is this my time to go? Because even Yeshua knew when to hide himself. It says because they wanted to kill him, he did not openly, you know, go to certain places because he knew they were hunting him down. Because his time had not yet come. He knows when and how, the circumstances of his death, what needs to be done before then. It's not that he was a coward. It's just that's not the plan. The plan was to go to Jerusalem. The plan was to be captured in a certain way, to be betrayed. It wasn't just to be captured without a betrayal. There was so many things that had to lead up to that. They had to do the Passover. They had to, had to be during Passover. Couldn't be before then. You had to fulfill the feast days. There's so much that had to be done. He had to raise Lazarus from the dead. There's so many conditions that had to be met. So no, I wouldn't think I can't. I'm not going to say that. Oh, he was cowardly, but yeah, he did exercise wisdom. That there is a time where perhaps if whatever, if the spirit is telling you that it's not your time, you should hide yourself and not just be stupid and tempt God to just save you from being an idiot and just exposing yourself. Hey, everybody wants to catch me. I'm over here. Is my address. Come here, behead me. Why would you do that? Don't do that. But there is a time for us to be bold. There is a time for that. There's a time. There's a way to do things. So anyway, yeah. Would I still be doing these streams? I mean, there's a certain wisdom that you have to exercise. Maybe you can speak in code. Maybe there's a way to organize things in a way to, still preach the gospel, to still spread the truth, to promote the truth, to fellowship or gather together, or to worship. But you still need to do so in a way that is, wise as serpents and harmless as doves. We're not here to start a rebellion and overthrow the government. That's not what we do. We're not here to conquer by means of violence. No, we conquer by means of love and peace. And when it comes to it and our backs against the wall, maybe that is a time where you do defend yourself and your family, because there's no law against defending yourself and defending others who are defenseless and powerless. Even Moses, when he saw the daughters of Jethro being bullied, he didn't just, oh, I'm not gonna, no, forget it, none of my business. No, he went there and he put those men in their place, defended the daughters, and he was right to do so. He was justified. He protected the weak. So anyway, that's all I have to say about that. Wow, what an off-topic conversation topic there, but yeah, let's do a new stream. And I don't know what else to. I don't know how to wrap this up, but just to say, thanks be to the Father. Let us not let our zeal grow. Let's be more zealous because we know the time is short. Because there are people who are persecuted and being persecuted, and they're being killed, and they're being raped, and we have to pray for a way for us to be as desperate as they are, to have the same zeal, if possible, for God to give us that same zeal and passion for His Word as they do, if that's His will. Because again, they are in a place where their lives are on the line, and any day, any moment could be their death. Like they're at they're in a delicate situation that is, their lives are threatened every day. They have to be very wary. Maybe we have to have our eyes open to the spiritual reality of what's going around us. Maybe, perhaps, if we really look at the world for what it is, and the culture and the society in the West, that it's no different spiritually, that our lives are on the line every day, that spiritually we can be killed and be lulled into a sense of complacency and trusting in wealth and being conformed to the society around us, to dress like everyone else, to speak like everyone else, to have the same attitudes, toxic attitudes of disrespect towards our elders, towards our parents, towards our fellow neighbor, to just think, oh, you're this race or you're that faith, so I shouldn't care about you. No, to not have the heart of Jesus Christ, Yeshua, HaMashiach, towards our fellow man, that he would give his life for a Muslim, for a Hindu, for an atheist, for a homosexual, for an adulterer, for a politician. Yeah, slimy politicians too. And he did. He did die for all of us. But not to just show mercy upon the sinner who is unrepentant, but believing that when they realize his love for them, they would turn their life around and forsake their sin and their wrong ways and would surrender their old life and bury it in themselves and their old mind and their old heart and the way they used to behave and speak and think and drown in those waters of baptism and rise up as Jesus Christ, uh, the Spirit of Yah in them, working with them, working in them to guide their thoughts and guide their words and guide their actions and their attitudes and even their eyes to see the truth and see the truth of reality and society and to see the truth of all things, not just scriptural things. There are a lot of truths when it comes to even eating or diets and, a lot of things like that, when it comes to health and a lot of different areas of life about fashion and about, how women and men relate to each other and how, feminism and whatnot and how is that right? Is it wrong? How much should we be advocating for women and to what point do we respect women and allow them the the voice to say I don't need men, or is it show them respect and promote women and their strength being mothers, being the homemaker, being the guider, the guidance for these the new generation. They're teaching the Torah to their children, that it's such one of the most honorable endeavors and that a human could ever do is to be a mother. Really think about it really deeply. To be a mother is such a difficult thing, but such an honorable thing that God is very pleased when a mother does it the way He wants them to, to do it. Just like in Proverbs 31, for example. I mean, there's so many examples where women are bold. They're not just relegated to never talking or never doing anything. No, the scriptural examples, women do speak the words of God, that they are prophetesses, that they are leaders in the body, that they are judges like Deborah, that they are very much like an Esther, where everything's on the line and they are in the center of it all. And they have a huge role to play in the destiny of a people. So, no, we aren't to disregard women and just, not give them a certain amount of rights and authority and dignity. But we aren't also to go to the extreme and say, women are better off without men. And that being a housewife and being a mother is such a demotion and it's demeaning to women. No, that's actually one of their strengths. That the characteristics and things that God put in them by design to make them, such a incredible creation and a wonder is when they do motherhood correctly and they know their role, they fulfill their purpose. I mean, not their ultimate purpose, but at least the motherly purpose. I mean, everyone's ultimate purpose is to human beings' ultimate purpose is to be children of God. And we don't even know the fullness of that, but it's incredible when if God would just open our eyes, if our Father would open our eyes to the truth of the reality we live in the West, to see that maybe it's no different than the Middle East, where in their situation they are very much at death's door in terms of being imprisoned. We can also be imprisoned by our culture and be ensnared by the attitudes of the mass media and pop culture and just attitudes of the world around us where this is normal, everyone should dress like this. And women, it's okay to dress like that. It's okay for women to be aggressive and to sleep up, on the first date, they can just have, fornicate and not respect their bodies. And it's okay for women to have an OnlyFans and, whore themselves out. That's okay. They can show whatever part of their body. It's okay. They can weaponize their sexuality. That's okay. I think our minds are imprisoned. Our souls are being imprisoned. We're imprisoning the Spirit of God from being effective in our lives and in the lives of the women, the daughters, these potential mothers. Yeah, they're being raped in the Middle East, but are we not being raped too, spiritually speaking? When we are taken by our eyes and we think these thoughts, adulterous thoughts, sometimes it's not consensual because it's not like we want to see this person wearing yoga pants or whatever it is. We can be in a way. I'm not saying we're literally raped, but it can lead to those kinds of things. We're imprisoned by the culture in a lot of ways. We can be lured into a trap and it's non consensual because it's so overpowering, it's so pervasive, the ways of this world, the attitudes, the identity politics, and dividing people based on all different things, like whether it's race or, you're right wing, I'm left wing, you're this, I'm that, and whatever it is. You're a Democrat or Republican, or we're so divided, and we have to realize, yeah, there are some things that are biblically unsound when it comes to certain political ideologies, but there are some things where we have to realize, is this really, is this what God wants us to think of ourselves in that way? And then looking at, they're being murdered. Are we not being spiritually murdered because we don't allow the spirit of Elohim to live in us? Instead, our old man continues to rise up and we're led by, okay, let me just watch this or let me entertain that. Let me just do what I want. Yeah, just Shabbat, but let me do what I want. I'm just gonna, wouldn't hurt anyone to just do what I want, whatever my pleasure is, what my will is. Let my will be done. I'll keep the Sabbath how I want to keep it. I'll just disregard whatever you said. You said don't work. It's okay. I'll just work just one day. I've never broken it. Just this one day. Let me do it one day. Is it really that bad? Let me just work on one day. It's not gonna hurt anyone. I need the money. I need it, or else I'm gonna be homeless. We can murder that spirit. We can it can be grieved. Although we may have the spirit of Yah, but is it like a flickering light, like a candle in the wind? So they say, or are we like a blazing fire? We're burning with zeal, and we will not compromise. We're not going to budge. We would rather die than disobey. than compromise and give in and conform to the world around us. I think that goes for, ironically, goes for a lot of faiths. We will not compromise. We will stick to our principles. Is what I believe. This is what I believe to be true. What you guys are doing is corruption. It's against what I have learned is the word of God, whether it's from the Quran, the Torah, whatever. I'm not equating them as equal, but we have to have a conviction. It's good to be convicted, but we also have to be convicted and found in the truth. Make sure it's the truth of God and it's from God. And how do you know it's from God? How do you know it's from the mind of God? How do you know it's not a human being that wrote it? Well, as my art teacher famously said, I have no doubt this is not written by man and it is from the mind of God because it teaches you to forgive your enemies, to love your enemies. Who does that? Nobody. That's not the way we're wired. Only God is like that. And I'm going to add to what he said. It says, do not repay evil for evil, but repay evil with good. Who does that? Who does that? Who, when they drive drunk, they kill your family, who repays good for that? Nobody would. Not too many. Out of 100 people, maybe one. I don't think many people would forgive that. They would probably say, burn in hell for what you did. You took my family away. I have nothing now. You caused me so much pain because of your stupidity. And I wouldn't blame them for feeling that way. But God's way is greater. He's saying, you know what? I'll have mercy and I'll have mercy. And pity will have pity. So for someone to be like God and say, you were drunk, you made a mistake. Drunkenness is a sin, but you know what? I will forgive you because nothing I do or say to you will bring back my family. And it's not me forgiving you, it's the spirit of Jesus Christ, Yeshua, that is forgiving you. And I'm allowing him to live in me. I'm not doing it, out of bitterness. I'm doing it because I believe it. It's a spider. Because I believe it. And he taught me the right way and I have to follow it. And I believe it's a blessing for doing so. I believe it's a blessing for doing that. Um, yeah, so for this message that I'm going to present in the next stream, I think it's important to focus on the practical application. Yeah, we get into conceptual, definitions, but the most effective sermon isn't somebody talking and saying, this is the Greek and this is the Hebrew and this is what, and I'm not mocking. I'm not saying that it's all for nothing. It's useless. It is very useful, but the most effective sermon is somebody actually doing, living their life, exemplifying it. A lot of us like stories. A lot of us like movies. We do so because I believe God designed us to really understand very big concepts and principles that we otherwise would not learn if those stories were not recorded or we did not see them lived out or we didn't live them ourselves. They're more we're more able to not just understand a concept but really internalize it and then are able to share it with others after we've lived it. It is often said, when you suffer a trial or whatever trial you go through, like for instance with me, one of my hardest things is pornography. My addiction with pornography. It's one of the hardest things I've had to deal with, and it's been a challenge throughout my life. So if I were to meet a young man who's 13 years old or whatever in his teenage years and he has not been introduced to it, or he has, they can then talk to me and say, how did you do it? Like, how did you overcome this? Because it's like everywhere and it's so overpowering. And I say, you know what? I can't give you my heart and say, just hate it. You have to work hard at it every day. You have to make that decision to not look. When you're out in public, you see a woman, short skirt or whatever they're wearing, it's inappropriate, it's not scriptural, it's definitely seductive, whether they know it or not, wearing a skirt that's showing their calf or whatever. Because, yeah, Even a calf can turn some men on. Even an ankle can turn some men on. I surrounded myself in a very conservative culture for at least I think it was like a month or two. I saw a woman's ankle and I was like, I literally went, I forgot what those looked like. I was so shocked. So yeah, you can go back to that old traditional values, the scriptural values. And what I'm saying is probably shocking to a lot, but it is scriptural. If you do your research, this is not the way women used to dress back in, biblical times. They wouldn't even show their ankle. They wouldn't show, even not the face, but I mean the whole face uncovered with the head uncovered. Head coverings was a Jewish Christian thing and then was then co-opted by the Muslims. And they preserved that. They credit to them. They've preserved that to this day. Whereas those who follow the Torah and believe in Yeshua, they don't, for the most part, are not doing that. They've abandoned that, which is a shame because that's actually scriptural. But anyway, as I was talking about, and then I got sidetracked. Is that yeah, it's been a challenge, and I would even tell them, I don't think this battle with your eyes and the temptation to lust will ever end. It will never end. The day it ends is the day you die. Because I can never tell myself, and I can't tell anyone that I've overcome it to the point that I'm a victor, that I've won, and it's no longer an issue. Because as long as I'm alive and my heart is beating and I can see, and women are women, and I'm a man, that'll continue. But I only win. I only make, small victories. I have small victories when I stop myself and I say no. Discipline. Potiphar's wife, Zelika, in the book of Jasher, said, "Nobody's here. It's just you and me, Joseph. No one will know. And I'm so beautiful. Have you ever seen or heard of a woman as beautiful as me in all of Egypt who's willing to give them their body to you? You could just do whatever you want. We can do whatever you want. No one will know." Joseph being, I think, 17, 18 years old, hormones probably going crazy, and this woman's probably in the sexual prime of her life too, in her maybe 30s, 40s. I don't know. He said it's usually around 35 when a woman is super horny. I'm just gonna say it's super horny. How can you resist? Well, by the spirit of Yah, he had it in his heart that if you look at the wife of another man, because she was the wife of another man, his boss, that is a sin against God. That is a sin against God. You would be transgressing the commandment if you commit adultery, actually, specifically adultery. But he actually applied, if we're going to accept Jasher, we're going to, I do that, I accept Jasher, that he actually applied the principle that Yeshua said if you look at a woman with lust in your heart, you've already committed adultery in your heart. He didn't look at her. It says he did not, he kept his eyes fixed to the ground, wouldn't even look at her. Because the moment he would look at her, then you're cut. Hook, line, sinker, you're in. Sex will be done. They'll have sex, without a doubt. He knows. He knows himself. Joseph knew himself. And the more you learn about yourself in this life, and I tell a young man, know yourself. If you know what gets you, you got to find a way to address it. If it's certain websites or if it's Instagram or whatever, just you got to cut it off. You got to cut it off, nip it at the bud. The bud is your eyes, or the bud is Instagram or whatever. You just got to stop going there. I had that problem. I was going to Instagram like every day and I didn't even want to see those things, but it was just on my feed. It's like it was being shoved in my face. I'm going, oh man, like what's with all these women and their obsession with their behinds? Like that's all you are is a behind? Is your butt? There's nothing more to you than your body? So you are just your butt and your breasts. There's nothing else. There's no substance. There's no character. You're not kind. You don't have talents, like actual talents, musical, whatever, creative. You aren't smart. You don't have a good sense of humor. It's all about your body. You think you're going to attract the right man by displaying your, how they say in Arabic, your aura, which is like the private parts of your body. You're just displaying it for all to see, everyone. It's like they're stuck in some limbo where they have to attract men, seduce men, and it's been working for thousands of years. Yeah, pornography is pervasive today, but to be honest, spiritual pornography has been there for hundreds of years through various art and statues and all that. It's been around, but it's just evolved. If I could say that, it's become, I don't say evolved like it's gone better, but I mean it's become a lot worse. That we're so saturated in it. Everything's been over sexualized, and I won't say what, but everything has been. It's so sickening. Makes me want to puke sometimes. That it's even hard to go outside of the house, unless you live in like a Amish community, or if you live in a Hasidic community or some community where it's ultra orthodox and they're, the women dress modestly. Like it's almost impossible unless you have, like Daniel, you determine in your heart not to not to commit whatever it is. You determine in your heart not to partake of the table of the king. Or in my case, I'll say I'll determine in my heart I'm not gonna give a woman a second look because yeah, it's hard to ignore that first look when they're just you're walking and you're shopping, and then yeah, a woman's walking your way. So you look at them, but it's not like you're like staring. You're just like, oh, it's like the sun. You don't stare into it, else you go blind. So it's Seinfeld. But anyway, yeah, it's like that. You don't give them the second look. And if you're even better, you don't even give them the first look because you kind of see it on your periphery. You're going, yeah, I already know what that is. It's a woman with yoga pants and whatever. She's probably, you know, voluptuous, but that's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to lead to anywhere good. This person is probably not, you know, observant and fearing Elohim because a woman who does would not dress that way. She's out to attract men, or if not, she just wants to look beautiful and sexy, whatever it is. They think this is normal. This is gonna get them the attention they want, or whatever it is. It's self fulfilling. It's very vain. It's very, you know, it's not gonna. They're not displaying what they're not showcasing their soul. They're showcasing their body. If they really want to attract you for who they are in their heart, their clothing would reflect that. It would be modest. It would show that they respect themselves. It would show they respect others around them, and they're not going to draw attention to a certain body part or parts. Instead, you would focus on the substance of their words, the way they carry themselves, how they treat people around them, especially the elderly and children and animals and people who are marginalized in society, or whatever it is, or even just somebody just in a lineup, whatever it is. You look at the example of Rebecca and how she gave water to the camels. It wasn't that, Abraham's servant said, "Oh, wow, look at this woman with this big butt." No, it wasn't that. So this woman is one who serves. And he even said beforehand, if she gives water to not just me, but the camels, I will know, this is the sign that this is the woman he chose. And although, yeah, he did put those parameters and said, okay, these are the conditions, but it also shows her character. It shows the character, her heart inside of her, that she didn't have to do that, but she did it because that's who she was. Her character is on display, not her body. In fact, when she saw Isaac, she asked who that was. She covered herself. It says she put on a veil. I don't know if that's a full face veil, but anyway, she made herself even more modest. Dressing modestly displays your character more than showing your body, ladies. Displaying your body does not show your character, shows a lack of character, but being modest and dressing modestly displays more character. You actually make a better impression on the majority of men. Even those who are looking for a one night stand, you put your foot down and they say, "Who is this woman? So different than everyone else." They won't look at you like a piece of meat because men are drawn by their eyes. It's just the way we're wired. But anyway, the point is, we are very much in a very our lives are on the line here. We just don't. It's not in a physical way, like not that we're going to be martyrs physically, and we're not being persecuted religiously. We're being persecuted culturally because the big contrast is in the Middle East. They are very modest. Women do dress modestly. Family relations are very close. Men relationships with men, I'm not talking about the bad way, but talking about men just having being in a social club of men or being in a group of men who hang out together. It's very strong there. Families are very strong there. They're very close. They can show affection. They can be who they are and express their full spectrum of emotions that God gave us. Those things are very much alive and well there. Respect for elders, all these things that are scriptural. However, they are persecuting Christians and Jews, and there's a persecution on this people in this way. But in terms of the West, yeah, maybe there isn't that persecution of those in the way, but all those things I mentioned about modesty, about the family, are just not as strong, or maybe completely absent. Like how many men actually hang out with other men, and not in, I'm talking about like a scriptural way where it's like Yeshua with his disciples, where they actually iron sharpens iron. For a lot of men, how many of us can just a grown man hug another grown man? It's not very common. I've seen it. I've seen it, but it's not very common. It's different than the Middle East, where there's really a you think of King David and Jonathan, the son of Saul, and that was a very they had a loving relationship, and he loved him more than a brother, and that was something that I think even Yeshua had with his disciple and disciples, that they were together for 3 years, and they just they're like best friends and had that closeness. So I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things that were being attacked in a cultural way that is very people say there's so much in the world that is anti-Torah, and that's what it is. It's exactly what it is. Yeah, they are anti-Torah in the Middle East. They won't let you follow Yeshua and believe on him and preach the gospel, but we are very much anti-Torah in a spiritual way in the West, and we have to stand our ground, because if we don't and we conform to the society, we'll be spiritually murdered, spiritually imprisoned, and spiritually raped with our eyes and our hearts, because when they get our eyes, they take our hearts too. And eventually, you end up impregnating one or something. And then that's it. The perhaps perhaps this way dies with you. Perhaps the way dies because it's not going to be taught to your children, or you'll just continue compromising, and then it dies out. It won't continue on in your generations. It'll be whoever, sticks to their principles, sticks to marrying within the faith, or marrying within, people who have the similar values. So yeah, I think we very much are in a similar situation to the Middle East, but it's not, by any stretch of the imagination, it's not a physical persecution. It's not a physical, um, we're not, we're not martyrs in the physical way. We're spiritually being persecuted. And it is as bad, if not worse, than how they're being persecuted physically, because it's everywhere. it's everywhere, and it's to the point that if I say these things online, people are going to be shocked and go, What are you talking about? This is normal for women to wear pants." Yeah, it does seem innocent. I have to say, yeah, those are mom jeans. Okay, sure. But when you compromise on things like that, you give them an inch, they take a mile, and it will not stop. The jeans will get tighter. The jeans will start dropping. The jeans will, or whatever, they won't even be jeans, they'll be yoga pants. Yoga pants will be more transparent. The fashion has not improved. It has never gotten more modest. Well, not never, but rarely does it ever get more modest. Rarely. We've seen it from the Victorian era. And I'm not saying they're perfect then because, yeah, they did show a lot of cleavage, but at least they covered up their legs for the most part. The only ones who were showing their bodies were those in the harems who were fully naked, but that's because it was a harem. So, yeah, we are being somewhat persecuted and targeted. Um, Sexuality is one of the probably the biggest weapons and most lethal weapons in Western society that is being used as a snare. It is a trap for a lot of men. What about women, though? What is the trap for women? Is it materialism? Is it that they're also sucked into this belief that it's okay to show your body and weaponize your sexuality? It's okay, and they don't see it as weaponizing their sexuality. They see it as being comfortable in their skin and body positivity. I'm not saying it's wrong for women who are overweight to feel good about themselves. I think that's great, but you also have to use wisdom and common sense that it's not healthy either. But if that's just your body type, then yeah, it's good to be comfortable in your skin, but you should try to improve your health. But if somebody is doing that, it's like I've been working on it. It's like that's good, and they shouldn't be shamed for not looking like a stick model because that's also very bad as well. That's anorexia and bulimia. That was another extreme. But anyway, the point is that yeah, we are very much surrounded by a lot of bear traps and snares, man traps. You could call them man and woman traps all around in our culture and the way people dress. I keep focusing on that, but that's just one of the ones that are so pervasive is our fashion and our attitudes towards authority, figures of authority. You look at, defund the police and all this, and not just that, but even when we disrespect our political leaders, I'm not saying we should just worship these leaders, but there has to be some kind of respect as well. Not saying that support everything they say and do, but we shouldn't be like calling them idiots and things like that. I think we're accountable for every word we say, and I'm not going to attack somebody, whoever it is, president, prime minister, just because of whatever. I'm not going to attack them as a person and say, "Oh, this guy's a da da da." I'd rather just say, this policy I do not support because it's anti this Bible principle, and that's fine. But I'm not going to attack them, their appearance, or something that is so vain. I'm just gonna, show them respect, but still, if we have to speak out about certain principle that is biblical, then yeah, we should. So yeah, there's a lot of traps. Again, fashion was another one. I just said our culture, attitudes, lack of respect of authority, and yeah, they seem like kind of mundane and innocent, but no, when you allow these attitudes to become normalized, they are very toxic, and it's hard to uproot them from our lives, from our conduct, from other people. Not we're going to uproot people, but I mean for other people to uproot it from themselves. So yeah, you look at the way families deal with each other. How many people actually, you know, spend time with their parents and really have a close relationship with their own mother and father? I mean, it's kind of rare in the West where you're like, I'm gonna spend time with my mom and dad, and we're gonna just bond. Like, no, people want to spend time with not their mom and dad, with their friends or whatever it is. I'm not condemning those who hang out with friends. I'm just saying that How many people are actually, showing the dignity and respect to their parents while they're alive? And a lot of people have been estranged from their parents, and people have reasons for that. Maybe there's abuse, but at the same time, it's still a toxic thing because that's not the way God meant it to be. So how can we say that we're not being persecuted when in the Middle East, their relationships with their fathers and mothers, not saying it's perfect, but that culture is more geared towards respect for parents and maybe close relationships with their children as well. Yeah, there is abuse that goes on in those countries, but how many are actually in really close loving relationships with their parents, right? I mean, there's so many things I can point at and focus on in terms of how we are ensnared by our culture and how there's so many minds. Like it's like a minefield of so many different issues. Pornography is another one. Just even the entertainment. Okay, Hollywood and entertainment and all these fear propaganda and how they label people who are religious as nut jobs and all these things. They 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 have our minds in a prison. So we're not in physical prison. We are in a mental prison where they imprison our minds to think certain ways. I've been victim of this too. It's like, okay, I see this man and he looks like he's from this country, so I'm gonna assume he's whatever because this is what I've seen in the movies. So they're all like that based on a stereotype. And some stereotypes are true and some are not. But you have to give people, a blank slate to say, okay, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's be careful though. Let's not just fully trust them, but we can't let the media dictate the way we think and approach life and perceive reality. Let the Bible do that. Let's let the word of Yah and his spirit guide our minds into forming opinions and critically thinking because the media and pop culture does not want us to critically think at all. Does not want us to think for ourselves. They want us to just accept their reality or whatever they're presenting to us as reality and as normal. So if you would say, yeah, we have it so good in the West, we do. Yeah, on a physical level, in terms of religious freedom and all these things. But which one is more dangerous? The physical persecution, imprisonment, and, murder? Or is it the spiritual imprisonment and spiritual murder? I'd say they're both pretty dangerous. But between the two, I think in the West we have it worse. Because if you kill the spirit, you kill the soul. But if you kill the soul, you don't kill the spirit. Because those being persecuted in the Middle East are actually, their faith is increasing. Whereas if we're being killed here spiritually, our faith is not increasing. Our faith is only diminishing. It's only getting more lukewarm. And we are becoming very lackadaisical and very much um, taking things for granted. Like I said, the third temple, we'll take it for granted because of the way we're being ensnared by all these traps in the West, by the the mental and spiritual prisons in the West, by the minefields of weaponized sexuality, and this goes for men and women. I'm not saying men are not guilty in a tank top and like shorts. I'm going, you know what? I can't do that anymore.